This is Reed Diamond, and you're listening to Fascination Street.
Oh my God. That's fantastic.
Yeah, AV in your ears. That's Ambush Van giving you this audio visual down the most interesting street in the world with my boy Steve. Fascination Street, you already know. Let's get it when you whip in the Fascination Street.
Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with actor Reed Diamond. Whether you know him from the television show Dollhouse or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Homicide, Life on the Street, Franklin and Bash, this dude is everywhere and he is in everything. Television, film, hell, he is in one of the Avengers movies. He also has a new show coming out in June called Orphan Black Echoes. It is in the universe of the original Orphan Black TV show, but it's a little bit different, and we talk a little bit about that towards the end. In this episode, though, we do get to know Reed. We talk about where he grew up and what got him into acting. We take a little detour to talk about his musical career, which was a blast. And then we focus on his acting. He tells wonderful stories about working and going to school with the incomparable Andre Braugher, who we lost recently. Reed's words are a wonderful, wonderful depiction of getting to know Andre Braugher. We also talk about how Reed got into the Joss Whedon-verse and sort of some of the things that he did working with him. And then, of course, like I said, we talk about this new show. It's a spinoff of the original Orphan Black. It is called Orphan Black Echoes. It came out in Australia in November of 2023. Look for it in June of 2024. And this is my conversation with Reed Diamond.
Prepare to be fascinated. Prepare to be fascinated. Prepare to be fascinated.
Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Reed Diamond. How you doing today, man?
I'm really good, Steve. How you doing, buddy?
Dude, I am so excited. Listeners, you can't see this man, but he's just as pretty as you think he is.
No, go on, Stephen.
Oh my goodness. We don't have that kind of time.
Oh, you're quite attractive too.
Sure, yeah. I bet you say that to all the trolls.
Heck yeah.
Are you in Maine?
Yeah, so we got a ton of snow. It's heaven up here.
I thought you lived in like Toronto or something.
I live everywhere. Right now, I want to live in Maine, so we're here.
Well, welcome back to the United States, buddy.
Thanks, but yeah. I'm an American through and through. Canada's been an interesting experiment. No, it's been good because we went up there because my wife had retired for 13 years and she had a huge career up there. And so we went back 4 years ago, right in time for the lockdown. And then she's been back bigger than ever. You'll have her on the show next, I'm sure.
What does she do? What's her profession? I don't know who your wife is.
Yeah, her name's Marnie McPhail Diamond now. But yeah, she had a great career. She started as a teenager on this show called the Edison Twins, the first Disney show back in the 80s. And then she retired at the height of her career.
In the 80s?
Well, she didn't retire in the 80s. No, she retired when our daughter was born in 2007. And she just finished this great Disney movie, The Greatest Game Ever Played. And then she retired and then came back ready to go back to the business. And the business wanted her. So right now she's starring opposite Nick Cage in Dream Scenario. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh, wow.
And she's opposite Andie MacDowell. She's got a series just about to start its second season on the Hallmark Channel, The Way Home. And so she's crushing. She just did the new M. Night Shyamalan movie. She's infinitely more talented. I mean, I definitely married up.
Yeah, you and me both. How did you meet her?
We met on a movie. This March will be 22 years ago. We met on a Lifetime Movie of the Week in Winnipeg, Manitoba, in the great country of Canada. 22 years ago, I'd been there, I guess, about 2 weeks before she showed up. And it was the coldest place I'd ever been. It was at that point, I remember every morning on the radio, the DJ would say, do not go outside today. It is not safe to go outside. And the rivers were frozen. And I remember going, oh, this place it's godforsaken. Go, that's the meaning of the word godforsaken. And as soon as she showed up, I go, oh, it's the Paris of the prairies. And we fell in love with her. And we went back 4 months later because I asked her to marry me 4 months later. We went back to Winnipeg and got our exact same room. We had a magical time. So Winnipeg, Manitoba is the Paris of the prairies. It holds great romantic allure for us, but we did the movie together and then we never worked together until just this last year because I got on a series that's coming out in June, Orphan Black Echoes, the spinoff.
Oh, we're going to talk about it.
Okay, great. And then, of course, she gets cast in there too. So she has to have all the jobs. jobs.
How cool is that?
It was really cool. I couldn't talk about it. Obviously, it's great that the strike's over. So now you can talk about what's coming out and what's happening. And it was really exciting. We didn't have any scenes together, but we were on set the same day. So we took a bunch of fun selfies in her trailer. And it was magical to be reunited on the same show.
That is so sweet.
Yeah.
I haven't had too many people who have gotten to work with their spouse on TV. Recently, I had Jeremy Swift,
Right.
the guy who plays Leslie from Ted Lasso.
Right.
The woman who plays his wife on Ted Lasso is his actual wife. And so it was fun to talk about, going to work together and playing themselves, kind of.
Right.
That's got to be a lot of fun working with your wife. At least getting to go to work with your wife.
Well, and we sort of work together now all the time. I'm sure we'll delve into this. I'm sorry I just jumped out of the gate just talking about other stuff. But it was like for auditions these days, the reason I can be in Maine or wherever, I mean, we live all over the place, is because everything's remote. If we have to do an audition for anything, it's a self-tape. So I'm very fortunate because I know a lot of actor friends of mine who are married to real people who have normal jobs. They sometimes lament that they don't have the best scene partner. And I have the best scene partner in the world for any self-tape I get to do and vice versa. So we get to improvise with each other. But also what's hilarious is she's just withering in her criticism if I'm phoning it in and vice versa. So we're just, our most common sort of direction to each other is like, you can do better. Let's do that again, which is great. So it's been fun because, we're partners in all things.
Have you ever submitted a tape and the people were like, you know what, Reed, we're going to pass on you, but who was that scene partner you had? Can we get that lady's number?
Well, I had something similar to that. I had a producer friend of mine text me. He goes, I heard you in the background of Marnie's audition. That was you. And I go, it was me.
That's hilarious.
I think that's the hardest thing, actually, doing the off camera for your spouse. The pressure is high on you because you want to kick ass for them because you don't want to mess them up. I do often worry that she's going to get, not worry is the wrong word. I would be very excited. I imagine often that she will get it just from her brilliant off camera work. She'll get a gig on one of my shows because she's on all the shows.
I can't wait to hear that story. So Reed, we did jump out of the gate a little bit, but what
buddy.
I like to do is I like to start from the beginning. Like, where were you born and raised? How'd you grow up? It helps us understand how you got to where you are, man. Where were you? Where'd you get from?
I was thinking about this and contemplating our conversation today. Life's interesting, right? Because there's a certain amount
No, it's not. It's fascinating.
Dude, Fascination Street. Yes, it is fascinating. Sorry. How could I have missed that? Life is fascinating. And here we are on Fascination Street. So in this fascinating life of ours on Fascination Street, there's a certain amount of talent and skill that goes into things, but obviously there's an incredible amount of luck, right? And fortune. So I grew up in New York City, which already put me, ahead of the game. I was very lucky. I grew up in New York City. I was also very fortunate when I started high school. At the same time, a guy came in named Michael Gilbert, a new teacher starting the theater program at my school. And I had probably the best theater teacher and one of the greatest experiences out of the gate that any young actor could have. And it was interesting because the school I went to, the sports teams weren't necessarily that great, but the theater program was amazing because this guy had turned it around. We were doing incredible musicals and incredible plays, and kids were coming from all over town to see those shows. So they weren't going to come see your soccer match, but you could definitely meet girls from other schools if you were doing How to Succeed in Business or The Crucible. And I ended up in theater completely, again, sort of, it was good fortune. I signed up for Latin 3 because I thought that would fulfill my language requirements. I was there on the first day and I was handed a piece by this, stereotypical, horrible, this is late 70s, early 80s teacher, British man. And he had me translate some Cicero and I couldn't do it. And I remember him just stopping the class, and I'm there with all the honor students. I had no business being there. And he said to me, because I believe you're here under false pretenses. And so I went immediately downstairs and I go, I better drop this class. And I just signed up for Theater 1 and it changed my life.
So I think that an unwritten rule as a prerequisite for Theater 1 is false pretenses. So good job.
False pretenses, exactly.
Good job.
I've been writing false pretenses ever since. It's weird because I thought that that's when my love of acting and theater started. But
how old were you at this time?
So I'm 14.
But by then you had already done things.
No. Oh, so you've gone on Google.
I did your Wikipedia and it's a little confusing because I've heard you in interviews explain your path to acting, and that is completely antithetical to your Wikipedia credits.
This is the best sort of primer on never believe Wikipedia.
Wait a minute. It says I'm famous, rich, and beautiful.
Well,
folks always believe Wikipedia.
That is true. So sometimes it's right. Stop clock is right twice a day. So there is another Reed Diamond. We are almost the exact same age. So he was a child actor, and he was in that movie. I don't know if you remember 2 Minute Warning.
Who cares about that? He was in The Incredible Hulk.
And The Incredible Hulk. I used to draft off of his fame and get attention for it. Really, my acting career began at PS 84 on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And I remember they brought us into assembly. It was one of those days where I don't know why they were showing us a movie, and they showed us an after-school special, which was Sarah's Summer of Swans.
Oh my God, Reed Diamond was in that.
And the other Reed Diamond was in it. And we look relatively the same, right? And so at the end of the movie, the after school special or whatever it was, his name came across and everyone was like, oh my God. And they said, was that you? I go, of course that was me. That was me. I just didn't want to talk about it.
You just saw that it wasn't me.
He looked remarkably like me and we had the same name. So I drafted off that for a little while. But it was interesting because in third grade at PS 84, they had us write our autobiographies for whatever reason, because you've lived so much by 8.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to fill up all that space. So the first few chapters were my humble beginning.
Chapters?
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Chapters. I mean, there was like one word in each chapter. But the final chapter, because I didn't have much to say about a young Reed Diamond at that time, was called The Future. And I just came across this. I remember when I was at Julliard and I had a friend over and we were going through my stuff. I guess I was moving out probably to California. And I found this autobiography that I'd written. And I turned it open and it said, I will be an actor. And I'd drawn a picture of myself in sort of like a ruffled collar, just sort of a Gielgud-esque Hamlet on stage. And then I'd also said, and I will have a van, because that's what everyone wanted in the mid 70s. And on the side of the van, I had spray painted beautifully the Fonz, as in Arthur Fonzarelli. I did my first musical there at PS 84, which was Oklahoma. I played Will, the comic lead. And that was the first time, because I think this is important too, because, we talk about luck. I think one of the lucky things is knowing what you want to do and finding the thing that fits for you, because we all have certain callings and things that we're better at or worse at and meant to do. And so with acting, I'd done this play and I loved it, but I just remember I'm 11 years old. And I just remember the way the parents talked to me and looked at me. They go, oh, you're really good. You're good. And I think that was the first sort of, because I'm a very practical person and I wouldn't have pursued this if I thought that it wasn't a shot. By about 10th grade with Michael Gilbert, I'm at my high school and we're doing these great plays. And I just done Bye Bye Birdie and I'm doing The Crucible. And I remember going, I think this is what I want to do. I want to be a working actor. And I remember telling my parents and my grandparents, and I remember none of them batting an eye. They were like, oh yeah, I think that's what you should do. So I was very lucky too that wasn't outrageous and people didn't think it was a ridiculous life choice. But then also, as I was saying, you talk about luck, by being in New York City, these plays that I would do at the Trinity School, people came to see them. So I was doing The Diary of Anne Frank in my senior year at high school.
Were you playing Anne Frank?
I was playing Anne Frank. And because we were going non-traditional then, which was great. It was just, we were cutting edge. It was New York City. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing new under the sun. Yes, I played Anne Frank. No, I played the teen boy, whatever his name is.
His name was Rat Fink.
Rat Fink. Okay.
Is he the guy who ratted her out?
No. Oh my God. No. How dare you? This is fascinating. And I was really lucky. My first manager showed up there, and this was apocryphal, and they signed me the next day. I went there that morning and they sent me on my first audition that afternoon, which was for a Panasonic TV commercial. And I got it. And so I thought that's how the business was going to be.
Now, this was back in the day when your first commercial could pay for your first 2 years of college, right?
This is exactly that. So in fact, it did. So that Panasonic paid for the first 2 years of college. And then I remember right before I started drama school at Julliard, 2 years later, I'd gotten cast in this Subaru commercial and I had to miss the first day of orientation. And I remember having to go to the assistant head of the drama program. And I said, I'm so sorry, Harold, I'm going to have to miss this first day because I've got to shoot this commercial. And they were, well, we really frown upon that. We're not pleased, but it paid for the first 2 years of Julliard. So I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, not pleased, but do you want to get paid?
Do you want to get paid? And thank God I did. As you know, yeah, commercials were a different thing back then. And it was really interesting because I met so many people there because it was New York City. The world was very divided back then. There was the East Coast and the West Coast. And so I was in New York. I was a New York actor. And there's so many people who you recognize now who are just part of that little, the young teen or, early 20s commercial people. And it was fun. It was exciting. There were a lot of funny ones, and commercials ran all the time. And we watched commercials. There were only 3, major networks. Something like the first commercial I did, that Panasonic one, I remember it premiered during Live Aid. I was watched every second of that. So that was really exciting. And then
the world watched every second of that.
The world watched it, and people watched those commercials too. Because I remember the Subaru commercial. I played some guy where the girl calls me up and she says, "Hey, my parents just left," and I drive over there in the rain in my Subaru Justy, and then "When a Man Loves a Woman," right, like that's playing in the back, and then I show up all soaking wet, and the door opens. She opens the door, and then her father's behind her, and I remember my line, which is funny because I never remember anything I did, but I was like, "Mr. Potts, you're home." And that, paid for the first 2 years of drama school. And also people saw that. I had lots of auditions just off of that commercial. But that was also because I started acting professionally senior year of high school. And I did my first commercial, like I said, after I met that manager. And then I was only a summertime actor because I still wanted to go to college and go to university. I'd been one of those kids who I knew what I wanted to do, I say relatively soon. It's sophomore year. So I didn't go have silly, fun summer vacations. After my junior year, I went and was an apprentice at the Williamstown Theater Festival. And then the second summer, I was trying to get more commercials. And so I went to college down at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill I thought I was going to go for 4 years. And just because I wanted to have a different experience, I wanted to leave New York City. I'd grown up there. Like I said, I've been very focused and very professional. And so I went down there and it was great. And I had a really good time, but I need to get serious. And I was a drama major there. But I remember going, everyone says I'm good, but I don't know if I'm that good. I feel like I need to get a lot better. And I somehow had this idea, I need to be classically trained, because I think I had never done Chekhov. I'd done some Shakespeare, but I really want to be confident with this. And that weekend, the New York Times Sunday magazine had a cover article was on Julliard and Yale, and all the actors who had gone there. So this is 1987, the winter of 87. And so I couldn't go to Yale because I hadn't finished school yet. It was a graduate program. And so I go, I'll just go to Julliard.
I love that Julliard is your fallback.
Well, part of my success is just blinding ignorance / if we want to say naivete. This is a funny story about that. So I go, the Julliard thing, I'll just go there. And William Hurt had gone there and he was my favorite actor at the time. So I called them up and I said, "Hey, I'd love to get an audition." They go, "You missed the deadline for submitting your application." I go, "Oh, well, there's this thing called FedEx." So it was just new and happening. I go, "If I Federal Express this to you," and they go, "Okay, we'll see." So I got in, they go, "Okay, we got it. You can have an audition." Now, because I've been doing all these commercials over the summer, I didn't know that it was hard to get into Julliard, so I wasn't nervous in that way. So I had one Shakespeare monologue that was something really tawdry. I didn't do anything good. I did something very romantic and masculine. And then for my comic, I did Charlie Brown from You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, because I just thought it was a fun monologue and I didn't know any better. And I remember thinking, I bet a lot of people get in here. I hadn't researched it. So in the morning you audition and then you go away and then they put up a callback list saying if you're going to be called back in the afternoon. And I was just so used to doing these commercials where half the people who audition get called back. I just assumed, there was a good chance. And then I just remember getting off the elevator and there was like 200 kids crowded around a piece of paper that had 2 names on it. And then I kind of got the sense of it, it worked out. But I was, like I say, naivete has been a blessing and a curse.
It's so wild because I also I did a monologue from You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown for my Julliard application, but I did it. Yeah. But you did Charlie Brown. I did Charlie Brown's parents. And so,
so I
didn't get in. Yeah, my whole monologue was wah, 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 and I didn't get in. So
that's weird. That
could have been. What could have been?
Steve, you were robbed, buddy.
I was robbed. But you know who wasn't robbed?
Who?
All of the fine folks who went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who got to meet Dex Diamond.
Oh, now did I talk about Dex Diamond on something else?
No, I went there. And no, hell no. Come on now. I can't tell you my magic. It's magic. Dex Diamond. Tell me about Dex Diamond.
Oh, I love that you know about Dex Diamond. It's so funny. Okay, so I'd lived in this world. I'd grown up in New York City. I'd been in the private school world of New York City. I'd known all these same people forever and ever and ever. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to go to North Carolina, because I just wanted to get away. I didn't want to see anyone from the city. I wanted to have a whole new experience. And I always wanted to have a nickname, right? And I remember when I got into Chapel Hill, they send you this little pamphlet to fill out where you talk about your interests, maybe some extracurricular things you want to do. And do you have a nickname? a friend of mine at the time had, as a joke, had called me Dex because someone's mother had misunderstood my name and thought, oh, who's that boy Dexter? Then as a joke, they called me Dex Diamond. And I was like, oh, I'll put down Dex. And I wanted to rush a fraternity. That was also on there. So I remember I first got to my dorm and people were like, they knock on the door and like, hey, is Dex Diamond here? And I'm like, oh, hey, that's me. And so for the first semester at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, I was Dex Diamond. And I mean, I guess I could tell this story. I had maybe a substance-induced revelation about that I wasn't truly being who I was, my true self. And so I was like, I am Reed Diamond and I'm an actor and I can't be Dex anymore. So I went back to my name, Reed Diamond. But unfortunately, there are still people to this day who call me Dex. Hey, Dex. Yes. So it was like basically immersing myself in a role, right? I created a character and I played him for a little while. I thought it would be fun. I even pretended I was going to go out for the rugby team until I met people who actually played rugby, right? So it's just like, I had this fantasy. And that's the reason I even went to that college, because I knew I was going to be an actor. Right? I knew there was no question I was going to be an actor. So I thought, I just want to have a college experience. And literally, I joined a fraternity because I was so obsessed about them from Animal House, right? So I'd seen Animal House a billion times. I go, I want to have that experience. And we'd gone down to North Carolina to look at Duke, because that's where people from New York City go. And then my dad said, hey, why don't you go look over at Chapel Hill? And you go over there, and I don't know if you've ever been there, but if there is a cinematic version of university, of college, it is gorgeous. And I was like, I have to go here. And I did. And then again, whilst I was there, luckily I came across the New York Times article. I had another sort of substance-induced revelation where I go, this is not where I'm supposed to be. I need to get better. I need to go to drama school. I'm trying to be somebody I'm not. And so that led me to the Julliard School.
Now, I'm wildly surprised that you couldn't come up with the nickname, because you're right in the wheelhouse of 1974 David Bowie's song, Diamond Dogs.
That would have been good.
Hey, do you have a nickname? Yeah, it's Diamond Dog. What? Well, that's not any more ridiculous than Dex.
I think I tried Speedy Reedy in 4th grade.
Oh, that's a horrific
That was
one.
terrible. But I think it was too, because at the school I went to, I was this middle-class kid whose parents worked 2 jobs so I could go to this private school. So I was surrounded by a lot of people who were like Trips and Chips and Skips. And they had those kind of cool, intergenerational wealth nicknames. So I was jealous of that. But cut to the other Reed Diamond.
Sure.
So when I got my first commercial, the Panasonic commercial in 1985, I had to join the Screen Actors Guild, and he was registered there. So I had to put my middle name in for my first few jobs, which was awful.
What's your middle name?
Edward.
Oh, that is awful.
Well, to have 3 names, I was Reed Edward Diamond. I remember my dad.
You could have just been Red Diamond. What's wrong with you?
We thought about all these things because I guess the theme of this conversation right now is vectoring towards authenticity. I'd always been Reed Diamond. And so Reed Edward Diamond, it wasn't right. It wasn't me. And I did my first movie because my second year at Julliard, I got Memphis Belle, and I went off for the summer, and I missed some of my 3rd year of school to do that. And I'm Reed Edward Diamond in that, and I think I was Reed Edward Diamond in one other TV movie I did right after that. And then I wrote the other Reed Diamond a letter right before I was going to move to Los Angeles. I just finished that movie. I'd done my first Broadway play, and I was going to go to LA. And I just wrote him, and I said, hey, because I think he pretty much retired. And I go, would it be okay if I had the name? And he very graciously allowed me to have the name. So we worked that out with SAG.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the Mencius thing.
That is unheard of.
It's unheard of, because I know I've heard horror stories of some of my other actor friends, because I never was happy with the 3 names. It just didn't feel like me. It felt very soap opera-y. It just was strange. And it was so gracious of him. And weirdly, we'd never run into each other. And I've met people who knew him and when I was in LA and stuff like that, but I'll be eternally grateful to his generosity.
That is the most generous thing I've heard of in a long time. Wow.
And you talk about Wikipedia, so I mean, it took me forever to get those off my IMDb. I go, that is not me. They go, well, we think it is. I go, I'm pretty sure I would know.
We think it is. Just call them back and say, look, I know it's not me. It's Steve Owens.
It's Steve Owens.
It's pronounced Reed Diamond, but it's spelled Steve Owens.
You mean Fascination Street, Steve Owens?
That's the one.
What?
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors. let's get back into it.
Okay, so a long time ago,
Yeah, buddy.
you played music.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still play music?
I play music all the time.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you still have your coffee can Mr. Peanut drum set?
Now, Steve,
It should be called Stalker Street because, boy, I got you.
No, I see why it's Fascination Street. And in fact, I'm now just embarrassed and chagrined that I even spoke at any point during this without waiting for these brilliant questions. So, Steve, no, I do not have my coffee can drum kit. I wish I did.
I wish you did.
Yes. And for those who don't know what the coffee can drum kit was, so at PS 84, a few of us formed a band, but none of us played any instruments but the drums.
What was your band called?
Well, that band, when we finally had our big gig, we were RAF, as in the Royal Air Force.
Rad as fudge. Royal Air Force.
But my 8th grade band was Black and Blue. But by that point, I had a guitar. But the coffee can drum kit didn't have any drums. None of us had drums. And so we took coffee cans or Mr. Peanut cans, and we play them as drums. And then we would put pennies into one of them to make it a snare drum.
Which sounds ridiculous, but it's really kind of genius.
Oh, dude, it sounds great. And what happened was,
well, I don't know about great.
It sounded good for a 9-year-old. It sounded pretty good, a 10-year-old. And then I was doing wood shop at another school as an after-school activity, and I built a stand for my drum kit. So
you spent your woodworking time to build a stand for your coffee can and Mr. Peanut can drum set.
I sure did, my friend. That was because at a certain point they stopped me because all I would build in woodshop were machine guns, replica machine guns. And they were like, well, can you stop doing it? Was the 70s. And they didn't want me making guns, but my parents wouldn't let me have toy guns and I would just make wooden guns. So I built this stand so I could stand fully upright. And I made all the holes. I brought in the different lid types and I made multiple holes on the tabletop. And then I would stick nails into the sides of the can so that they could hang within that structure. I even took dowels and formed my own drumsticks. And then eventually supplemented that with, I found a marching band drum in the garbage, which was amazing. Because in New York City in the 70s, you could find I know people who furnished their entire homes with things they found in the garbage. And then I got a cymbal, and then
I got a cymbal.
I got a cymbal. And then I remember at our first concert, we played outside of Mr. Seymour's class in 5th grade. We made our drum riser or our band riser on desktops, and we played in the hallway. And because we were exclusively percussive band, our first song was
We Will Rock You.
We Will Rock You, as you know. In 6th grade, I finally had gotten a Sears kids drum kit, which was a piece of garbage. Like, one sort of kick drum hit and you probably go through it. And that's when we switched our name to RAF. And then we got a little ambitious, which was my early band stories were always with our ambition far exceeded any of our skills. And so I had just seen Rod Stewart sing this at the UN. So we did Do You Think I'm Sexy?
How old were you?
11. And of course, I was playing the drums, but I also, of course, because I'm the ham, I had to be the singer. So I'm singing in that one. I was just telling my daughter this morning, I go, do you remember when your school had one microphone, right? The school had one microphone for all activities, right? It would be one of those old sort of like 40s crooners mics. And I remember us doing, Do You Think I'm Sexy? If you want my body. And then I remember one of our friends who couldn't play the drums, but said he had taken saxophone lessons, but we had never checked on that or if he could play the solo. And so I remember him improvising the sax solo to Do You Think I'm Sexy in front of the entire, I guess it was a full assembly. It didn't go well. It didn't go that great, but it was the beginning. And then in 8th grade, I had a band, which I finally played guitar. I finally moved to guitar, and we got to play the 7th and 8th grade dance. And that band was called Black and Blue because my friend Ian Levy, who interestingly enough, the show I just did, Orphan Black Echoes, the creator of that show, when they offered me the role, she and I got on the phone and I found out she lived in the building that Ian Levy lived in, where we used to have band practice for Black and Blue.
Wow.
It's down the street from me in New York City. So everything comes full circle. But Ian was into the blues. He was a Delta blues fan, and I was into rock and roll. So we called ourselves Black and Blue. And then we had some groupies before we hadn't really gotten the songs down, but we had some groupies who would come to our rehearsals, and they made us, because it was the late 70s, early 80s, they made us t-shirts, because that was all you did. You went to the t-shirt shop and they had little paste on sort of felty-esque lettering. It said Black and Blue. And I remember we wore those shirts to the circus at Madison Square Gardens, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus. And I remember me and Ian Levy, two 13-year-olds trying to get beers at the circus and finding out they don't sell beers at the circus. And they're like, hey, what's that? They go, oh, that's our band, Black and Blue. But we got to play the 7th and 8th grade dance because we'd auditioned with Brown Sugar, which you can't play anymore. But we auditioned with Brown Sugar and we had Brown Sugar down. And so like, yes, you can play. I remember auditioning for the principal of the middle school and our history teacher, Brenda Griffin. And we killed Brown Sugar. And then we thought, oh, yeah, we can get 30 songs together in a couple of weeks.
30?
Oh, dude. And we had some of them down, but I'd also, this is, gosh, you're taking me down memory lane here.
No, I'm taking you down memory street.
Jesus, but Steve, by the end of
right
this,
there.
by the end of this show, I am going to get it right. Going down Fascination Street. So buying instruments in New York City in the late 70s, this was before Guitar Center existed. There was Manny's and there was Sam Ash. It's over like 48th Street in Manhattan, where the music stores were. Well, you go into Manny's, and first of all, they didn't want to see teenagers in there, right? But all the guitars were behind glass, and you couldn't touch them. You had to buy it to touch it.
Nice.
I had $100 to buy a guitar. I'd saved up $100.
Jesus, that's a king's ransom back then.
Well, I mean, I worked for prior to my acting career, didn't grow up with very much money, and my parents didn't really have much money to give me. So I always had jobs in New York City. So I lived 1 block from Broadway. I lived on the Upper West Side. So at 8 years old, well, even earlier, I took that marching band drum I found and I got a kazoo and I put clown makeup on, and I was a one-man band because one-man bands were big in the 70s. You'd go to like Fisherman's Wharf and some guy would be playing a one-man band. So I started with one-man band and then I switched to shoe shining. My parents asked, what do you want for Christmas one year? And I go, I want a shoe shine kit. And my dad still has that shoe shine kit, but I used to go up there and shine shoes on Broadway. And it was great. It was the late 70s and I made a ton. It was funny because it was a wild time there. The Upper West Side wasn't what it is now. It was a little rougher, but people took me under their wing. I remember this older gentleman. He's like, "You're not charging enough for this shoe shine. So you have to charge more for boots." And I was like, "Oh yeah, charge more." He's like, "You have to charge more for boots." And then he went across the street to like the shoe repair shop and got me better gear. He's like, "This is terrible polish. Here's better polish." And then I would just charge $1 for shoes and $1.50 for boots. And anyway, so I had $100 saved up for this guitar. And all I could afford was this Hondo brand, a Japanese sort of, it was their version of an SG. And I wouldn't even you pick up that guitar and go, no way. But it was all I could afford. It looked cool, but it literally could hold its tune for 1 chord. You could do 1 strum and that thing would go way out. So I just remember, and this is before electronic tuners. This is when you had a pitchfork that went to an A, and you could tune your A and then try to tune the rest of the guitar off of it. So the Black and Blue concert in the 7th and 8th grade dance, it didn't go great. And everyone was very disappointed when we didn't finish with Stairway to Heaven. I wanted to finish with my Stairway to Heaven ripoff original. That was all acoustic. And that's when I made the decision. I was thinking about music. And even with 9th grade, I thought about music. And then as soon as the theater thing took over, I can either go music or acting. And acting was the choice. But then as an adult in my 40s, then I started a band again. And I got a band with my teenager. We started as post-punk and now we're new wave.
Oh, that is so sweet.
Yeah. She's great. It is fun. And literally we were jamming the other day. We're playing. She's written 3 originals that we're all playing, and she's amazing on the bass. It was funny because I took her to a music shop in Toronto and I was going to go buy an amp that I saw online. And I said, "Do you want to come with me?" And she said, Sure. And we went over there and the amp wasn't so cool, but he showed us another amp. She goes, "You have to buy that amp." And it is an amazing amp and it sounded great. And as we're walking home, she goes, "I think I want to play the bass." And I go, "Great." And because I had a bass that I'd gotten the Christmas before, and I put her on it, and instantly she's like in time with the right touch, and she's crushing it. So we started as post-punk or punk band because you have to, and we were really into Amyl and the Sniffers at that time. And as all punk bands, as we got better, we became a new wave band, and now she's writing all these songs. And as I sit there playing with her, I go, "Oh, this is why I learned how to play the guitar." It wasn't to be in Black and Blue. It wasn't to be in RAF. It was so that I could be sitting in this room playing music with my kid.
It was so you could be an RAF dad.
An RAF dad, exactly.
That's really sweet. We're going to transition into acting a little bit now.
Here on Fascination Street.
Yes, sir. Okay, look.
Okay.
Recently, we lost the great Andre Braugher.
Yeah.
You worked with him for, I don't know, like 69 episodes or something of Homicide, Life on the Streets. Tell me a little bit about working with the great Andre Braugher. Well, you see how I just brought it way down.
Yeah. No. We're going to celebrate this guy. When I got to Julliard in my first year, he was the 4th year student. So he was a senior. at Julliard when I got there. When we showed up, me and my two best friends, I guess they became my best friends because of this experience. There was 3 first-year guys. They put us in his 4th-year production of Othello, where he was playing Othello. So we were these green, nude Julliard newbies, and we rehearsed with him for 8 weeks and just watched his magnificence and then did the show with him. So I got to know him then and was sort of blown away. I mean, he was clearly a star and just so masterful with the language and all those things that we know him for that presence and that intensity. So I followed him 3 years later to Julliard, and then I followed him 3 years later to Homicide. I remember when the pilot of Homicide aired, I was sitting in a hotel room in Vancouver shooting another pilot for NBC, and I just saw that show, and I go, I have to be on that show. I want to be on that show. And it was interesting because when I first moved to Los Angeles, after finished school, I'd done my first Broadway play, I moved to LA, and I got there and I had this existential crisis. And I go, I don't know if this is important, what I'm doing. Is an actor a real job? And I go, I think I want to be a cop. Yeah, I think I want to be a cop. And it was a crazy time in LA. It was just, the crime was through the roof. And I thought, oh, this is something. And then there were a lot of actors who you met because they were doing background work. So I met this LAPD guy. He took me to the police academy and he goes, hey, let's go on a ride along. So we went on a ride along in Watts, and it was really intense. But what was hilarious is all the cops I met, they all wanted to be actors. And just like those chemically induced epiphanies that I had in college, I go, I'm meant to be an actor. It's what I do. But I've been obsessed with cops. I've been studying them. I've sort of been doing the research. I read every real life book there was on them at the time about contemporary police in America. And I go, I'm going to play one realistically on TV one day. It's going to happen. I remember when the audition for Homicide came, I was finally 3 years later, I go, if they want someone who looks like me, I'm going to get this part. But that wasn't how things normally went, because when I first was auditioning for things in the first half of the 90s, almost everything I went up for, it said a Johnny Depp type. And I was sort of the anti-Johnny Depp. I was the opposite. And I remember that's one of the reasons I left New York, is everyone goes, because I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in Brooklyn. I grew up in the city. Every time when I was a young commercial actor, all the casting people were like, where are you really from? I go, I'm from here. They're like, yeah, you're from Iowa. And I'm like, I'm not.
Iowa?
Or whatever it is, Minnesota, wherever the heck you are. They didn't know. They're New Yorkers. They don't know anything that goes on between there and Los Angeles. But luckily, they didn't need to get a Johnny Depp type for Homicide. So I was lucky enough to show up there. And Andre, I was really fortunate too, because he and I left the show at the same time. We had that amazing final last scene where he puts me in the box and interrogates me and for killing Luther Mahoney and all that stuff that happened on Homicide. But he was a special cat, right? My joke always on Homicide, I'd be at the mall somewhere in Baltimore and people are like, what do you do? I go, I'm on Homicide. Oh, Homicide. That Andre Braugher is amazing. Everywhere I went, like forever. They go, oh, you're on Homicide? That Andre Braugher, he's amazing. So I go, he's amazing. And it was funny. I remember when I did Homicide, I hadn't done a lot of television. It was sort of my television crucible, doing 69 episodes of that. I learned a lot. So when I first got there, it was intense, right? It was a very intense set. How would you say these were the bad old days? And we were out in Baltimore and some shenanigans went on there. It was a rough place.
That was filmed in Baltimore.
We filmed it in Baltimore.
Oh, wow.
What's hard to put into context for people now is prior to streaming and cable, everything was on network, right? So this would have been an HBO show. This would have been a Netflix show.
This would have been The Wire.
And that's why The Wire is my favorite show of all time, because it's everything that we wanted to happen, and seeing David Simon's brilliant book brought to life in that way, and those characters. But The West Wing, I think for my money, The West Wing is probably the last time a network tried to make a great drama. But so Homicide, they were trying to make a great drama. So you're making a cutting edge cop drama with the best writing, the best directing, incredible actors, incredible guest stars. People also don't remember this, but movie people didn't want to do television at all. It was really looked down on, but you could get anyone to be a guest star on that show. And they were always bringing in cutting edge, hip happening directors, but it was an intense place. And we shot in Baltimore. They didn't shoot anything on location back then. It was you're either in LA, and there was nothing in New York. I mean, I did the second season of the original Law and Order.
With Jerry Orbach?
It was before Jerry Orbach.
Oh, wow.
This was the second season. So my cops were Chris Noth and Paul Sorvino.
Whoa, that is a while back.
Because the first season was George Zunda, the great actor from Deer Hunter and all those things, and Chris Noth. And then Paul Sorvino did the second season. And it's funny because, of course, Law and Order has gone on for a billion years. I was a bad guy in season 2. And then I think I showed up in season 15 as a lawyer on Law and Order. But so everything was going on in LA. So that was also part of the magic of Homicide. I mean, there were so many things. Dave Simon wrote an incredible book. Tom Fontana was an incredible writer, executive producer. We had so many great people there, but we were shooting on location. So there were no sets, right? Even the squad room wasn't a traditional set. There were no removable walls. They took the pier and they built a squad room there. And interestingly enough, it's now a luxury hotel. And my friend who I met while I was shooting that show, he's like, I'm going to put you and your family up there. So we went there and it was hilarious. We're having breakfast every morning in this hotel. And I go, this is where my trailer was. We parked it here down below. And then I go into this room, this ante room where someone's having a wedding rehearsal. I go, that's where my desk was. My desk was right there, which is hilarious because the structure is still there. It's very fascinating. So we shot everything on location in Baltimore, handheld, right? When we were in a crack house, we were in a crack house. When we were on the streets, we were on the streets. And so it added that grit to it that was unprecedented at that time in television. I mean, it was hilarious. You'd fire your fake gun and then you'd hear real gunshots off in the distance, right? I mean, they have that famous story, which they dramatize as well, but a criminal was running from the cops, ran onto our set and surrendered to our pretend cops because he thought they were real cops. I mean, that really happened, right? But when I got there, it was pretty rough. I was young, I was green, I was eager, and it wasn't necessarily the warmest set that I ever arrived at. But I, being a young method actor and method-y at the time, not truly a method actor, but also obsessed with being a cop, I go, this is what it'd be like. No one would welcome the new guy in. But Andre, he was very cordial to me and then gave me some really great advice. What happened was because we were in Baltimore and there'd been some real craziness before I showed up there. By the time I got there, I think we were all just like, everyone was just sort of a raging alcoholic and just having a really good time. Because what would happen is we would shoot all day and then we'd go across to the bar, Cooper's. It became Cooper's and now it is Cooper's. And we'd drink there all night and then show up and do it all over again, rinse, repeat. And everyone was together, the crew, the writers. It would not be unheard of for one of the actors to be in a wrestling match with one of the executive producers covered in beer on the floor. That was pretty common. But I remember Andre was like, he'd moved out of the city and he moved up into the suburbs. And I did that the second season. He was like, you need to get away from the madness. And I was like, I did. And it was good advice. And he was such a great actor because he kept you on your toes. But I was just saying, like in this crucible, I was trying to find myself. So when I first got there, I was like, I don't know who this character is per se, how I want to do it. And I just remember watching Andre and he finish every sentence perfectly with his perfect Julliard diction and his intensity. And I remember well, I went to Julliard. Maybe I'll try that. And I remember we were shooting an episode and my buddy Clark, who played Meldrick, my partner, we started shooting it and I started like really over articulating and he goes, what are you doing? As we discussed here on Fascination Street, as we vector towards authenticity, I was like, oh, I'm not being me. I got to be me. And I found who he was definitely, within a few episodes of the first season. And I did it my way and it ended up being, probably obviously my favorite character that I've ever played.
Hey, Streetwalkers. Here's a word from our sponsors.
Hey, Streetwalkers. On February 26th, we will release our 400th episode. I want to give each and every one of you a huge thank you for riding with me all the way to this giant mile marker. For the first time since the show started, I'm going to be taking a little break for the month of March. There will be no new episodes, but instead, I'll release an older episode every weekday of the month in a best of style, showcasing some of my wife's favorite conversations. Enjoy these 21 Fascination Street classics Monday through Friday, every weekday in the month of March, and I'll be back with all new episodes beginning April 1st. I couldn't do this without you, so tell a friend, and thanks again for being Streetwalkers.
Let's get back into it.
One of the coolest things on your resume, as it were, is that you have worked with Joss Whedon a handful of times. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Dollhouse, Much Ado About Nothing.
Yeah.
You were even in an Avengers movie, but I don't think it was the one that he directed. But how did you get involved in the Whedon-verse? You were even on Castle.
With Nathan. Yeah. Well, oh my God, this is truly fascinating.
Dude, I love Dollhouse. Dollhouse is one of the best shows ever written. Oh my God, it's amazing.
This is how it all came together through Dollhouse. So,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, the closest thing that I have ever seen on television to come to Dollhouse is Orphan Black.
yeah, very similar.
And so we'll get to that in a minute. But tell me about the Whedon-verse.
The Whedon-verse has been very important to me. I'll jump ahead a little bit and then I'll go backwards. I remember I was lamenting to my wife and I go, I don't know why the hell I went to Julliard. I don't know why I went to Julliard. I will never use this classical training ever again. And not 1 week later, I get an email from Joss and he goes, do you want to be in Much Ado About Nothing? I go, oh, there we go. And I feel like the Whedon family is explicitly interested in making me use my Julliard training, because then when I did Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. even later to create that supervillain dude, I had to use all of the things that I'd learned at Julliard. I had to think about my body and I had to think about my voice. I had that toolbox, because that's why I say, I don't know if acting school is important or training's important per se. I think, acting is a natural thing, but it's nice to have all these tools, even if you never use them. So anyway, so how Dollhouse happened was my kid had been born, or no, my kid was about to be born, because my kid was born while we did it. So I get this call from my agent. They go, hey, Joss Whedon would love you to do one scene in the pilot of this new show. Are you interested? And I go, oh my God, I've always wanted to work with him because I was a huge fan of his.
This was the first project you did with Josh?
Dollhouse was the first one.
Okay.
And I get this, do you want to go and do the scene in pilot? It's just going to be one scene in the pilot. I go, yeah, I'd love to work with him. I remember I show up, it's a scene with me and Olivia Williams, Adele DeWitt on the show. And I don't know what happened, but he and I we hit it off right away. We have a lot of common biographical experiences in places, but he took me on a tour of the set and it was so exciting because Fox had really invested in this incredible set. It just felt like a Bond villain. It was epic. But I just had the one scene and Olivia, I hit it off and it was a great scene. And then Olivia and I are walking to the parking lot to get to our cars. And she said, well, I'll see you in September. I go, no, you won't. I go, I'm just here for the one scene. And then had a part in the show. And after Mike Kellerman on Homicide, that was definitely my next most favorite part. Lawrence Dominic. It was such a gift and so much fun. And to work with that writing, I mean, he's so smart and all the people he brings together. It was a gift every time. And the suits were quite amazing. But I love that character. It's interesting because right now in Orphan Black, we're saying showing the show that's very similar, has a lot of aspects of that, of, programming and dolls. The character I'm playing right now feels to me like a combo of Mike Kellerman and Lawrence Dominic. It's as if they made love together, they would make my character Tom on Orphan Black Echoes.
I don't know if you know how biology works, but
I think there's a lot of things we can do these days.
So let's talk about Orphan Black.
Yeah, man.
Orphan Black, the original series, was a BBC show, and it followed a young woman. The actress is Tatiana Maslany, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically played a clone.
Yeah.
Not basically. She played a clone, but then the same actress played all these different clones with different dialects, different speech patterns, different mannerisms. Like everything was different. And it was so groundbreaking and outstanding that I was sad that it went away. I don't feel like it got the recognition it deserved.
No.
It was such a great show. And then, lo and behold, apparently there is a spinoff of Orphan Black called Orphan Black Echoes, which takes place in the future.
Yeah.
It's coming to America in 2024.
Yeah.
I said it like that because it came out in Australia in November of 23. The original show was outstanding. I expect nothing less from this version. What can you tell me about this series? I know you're in all 10 episodes, which is super dope.
It's super dope. I can tell you some things.
Oh, cool. How does it end? Oh, no.
Exactly. Wait. It ends on Fascination Street.
The dead end.
Things being top secret has really grown. The first job that I was ever on with a watermark script was Dollhouse. And that made sense, right? By watermark script, when I get a script for a show, it has my name on every page. So if I leak that to the interweb, then I will be held accountable. And Dollhouse was the first show I was ever on that had a watermark script, and which made sense. It's the Whedon-verse. Twitter didn't even really exist when we first started, right? It was all beginning, but he was the kind of guy where fandom would want that information. So that made sense. I remember too, like I always thought like, oh, if you had a beef with an actor, just steal their script and then put that thing online. Right? You know what I'm saying?
Damn, you are an evil genius. You're a bad guy.
Oh, I play bad guys. But now every show is top secret. Like whatever you do, even if it's just some everything is top secret now. So it got a little absurd. But all I can tell you right now,
I've had people on this show who were in scenes and didn't have any lines, And their script was watermarked. Like they didn't have any lines.
Oh, yeah.
And it's top secret.
Everything's top secret. On some shows, it warrants it, it merits it. But on other ones, I'm like, I think you think a little too much of yourself. I think if this plot twist gets out,
is this top secret, precious?
Yeah. I mean, if we want to be a little catty here on Fascination Street, sometimes I go, if your secret gets out, I think we'll be fine. But on the Orphan Black Echoes, well, I can tell you it stars Kristen Ritter and Keely Hawes, who are amazing.
You were in Better Call Saul. Kristen Ritter was in Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and I worked with her as a director. She directed me in a series that we did for Peacock, Girl in the Woods, which cool little sci-fi thing. But
I didn't know she directed that.
She directed it, and she was awesome. And so I've worked with a director and now as an actor. So it's in the world of Orphan Black. There are some characters that are there, but it's a whole new spin on it. And really smart. So John Fawcett, who created the original Orphan Black, is involved, and Anna Fishko, who grew up in the same building as Ian Levy and where we rehearsed with Black and Blue. She came up with the idea for this one, and she's the executive producer, and she's extraordinary. And I mean, and John's incredible too. And they've just come up with a really cool take on it. I mean, she's a magnificent writer, and the relationships are just vibrant and interesting. And she wrote me this incredible character, and they called me up and they go, do you want to do it? And I said, I think so. But do you want to talk to Anna? And I got on the phone with her, and within 2 seconds we found out, we all live in the same world, and I couldn't wait to work with her. And she's been extraordinary. Like I say, a really fun character, probably my third most favorite at this point. And like I say, it's the love child of Mike Kellerman and Lawrence Dominic. But we're 30 years in the future. We're dealing with a lot of the same subjects of transhumanism, but I can't say if we're clones or what we are, but it's good.
Well, it would be ridiculous for us, the audience, not to assume that there's clones involved in this, because that was kind of the whole point of Orphan Black. But Reed did not say it. I did. So he is safe.
Yeah. There's a very different take on it, and it's a great vision of the future, and seems quite plausible. And it was a blast to work on. And like I say, that reunited me with my bride of 22 years almost. Yeah,
I love that. That's one of my favorite things I've heard so far. Oh my gosh, dude. Reed, tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
I am at the Reed Diamond on Instagram.
Wait, I thought that was the other guy. Oh no!
Wait a minute. The Reed Diamond on Instagram, which is the place I choose to hang out. I'm Reed Diamond at Twitter, but I really don't post anything on there. I'm just doing the funny pictures now because I like the Instagram. I like the gram, as the kids say.
They don't say that. Again, Orphan Black Echoes. It's coming out, I don't know, sometime soon. Do you know when it's coming out in America?
It's coming out in June on AMC.
Okay, cool. June AMC.
Yeah. Because it was going to be last year, but the strike just changed everything.
Oh, that makes sense why it would come out in Australia last year and not until this year because of the strike. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Reed, as we're heading out here, is there anything I didn't ask you or we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about today specifically?
No, I just loved talking to you. It was fascinating. I wish I hadn't blabbed on so much because you had so many great questions. We should do this again because there's even more to cover, but I loved every second of it.
Well, we will do this again, and I will have some great gems for that episode as well from your amazing history that does not include the Incredible Hulk.
No. You can interview Dex Diamond next time. Dex will come.
Oh, my God. That'd be amazing.
He's different.
Beer bongs for everybody.
That's right, baby.
Reed, thank you so much for taking the time out of your crazy day and your hectic playing music with your daughter schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better in Fascination Street, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
Dude, 100% my pleasure. And you have a great rest of your week.
All right, man. It was a real pleasure. All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Opening music is the song FSP Theme, written, performed, and provided by Ambush Vin. Closing music is from the song Say My Name off the 2021 album Underdog Anthems, used with permission from Jax Hollow. If you like the show, tell a friend. Subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes and wherever else you download podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the episodes are available there as well. Check me out on Vero at Fascination Street Pod and TikTok at Fascination Street Pod. And again, thanks for listening.